Okay, so welcome everyone to the Glide Academy podcast. Really excited. I've got Nathanial Bibby on the show, and today we're going to be talking about leading with LinkedIn. So before I get into the podcast, Nathaniel, I'm going to do a bit of an intro. But really good to have you here, mate. Thanks for coming.
Awesome to be here. What a privilege. Thanks.
Awesome, mate. So Nathanial Bibby is the managing director of Bibby Consulting Group, a global digital marketing consulting firm which has built a reputation of delivering cutting-edge strategies, including Australia's first LinkedIn lead generation service. Bibby Consulting has generated over 400 million in sales for their clients using LinkedIn strategies alone. Nathanial is the host of LinkedIn Heroes, a web series featuring interviews with entrepreneurs like Grant Cardone, Kerwin Ray, Jack Deloso, Stephanie Rice, and Dr. John DiMartini. The series has had over 10 million views since 2018. So Nathanial Bibby has also won Best Use of LinkedIn at Social Media Marketing Awards in 2019 and 20. And the Social Media Marketing Institute recently ranked him #1 LinkedIn expert in the Asian Pacific region. So awesome. That's pretty fancy intro, mate.
Thanks, mate. I'm looking forward to adding Best Use of LinkedIn 2021.
Yeah, definitely. When's the awards for that?
September.
Cool.
It'd be nice to get the hat trick in the bag.
Yeah, no, sounds good, mate. So basically, you've been in LinkedIn for a long time, right? Like you started it, was it 10 years that you've been active on this channel?
Yeah.
And obviously with this podcast is an opportunity to really talk about LinkedIn. I think everyone's really interested about LinkedIn. It's got a lot of buzz, especially in the last 12 months, 2 years. I get a lot of inquiries about it, obviously. So it'd be good to, just really talk about LinkedIn today and your experience. So can you tell us about the last 10 years and how it's been for you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my background's in digital marketing, been in the game for about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my approach to marketing's always been to try and get more leads, to get more sales without spending any money. And so LinkedIn when I started, I was targeting cosmetic surgeons, and I contacted 10 surgeons, got 6 responses, had 4 meetings, made 1 sale. But because it was the ideal client, I was choosing who I was targeting. The average transaction size was huge,
right?
Relative to what was coming inbound through website inquiries and so on. And so I started sending more messages out, delegated it to an assistant, and then eventually, cut a long story short, figured that, if I could delegate it to an assistant, why couldn't businesses delegate their LinkedIn lead generation to me or my company? So I started a business. I started doing LinkedIn training around the country. When you got business professionals waiting for you in each city, waiting to learn about LinkedIn, it's a relatively new platform. I'm just kind of figuring it all out. That's when you really start to really learn and hone your skills. And then when you start managing campaigns for various industries, then you start to recognize, what strategies work for different types of businesses. So applying like this, similar to what you guys would do with SEO or Facebook ads, you look at a business and you can kind of tell what strategy is going to work best for them.
Yeah.
I've got that experience with LinkedIn. With a lot of LinkedIn trainers that are out there, if they don't manage the campaigns for businesses, they don't have that live feedback, so they wouldn't be able to tell you, would this wording get a better conversion rate than that wording? Because
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And social media as an industry is like that. There's a lot of experts that will provide training on how to use the platforms.
They're showing where the buttons are.
Yeah. But when you're sort of on the road and you're doing the work and you're seeing the results and you're seeing what works, what doesn't work, and you're able to test things, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, I'm a business guy.
It's a business thing.
The clients, they don't care about where the buttons are. They just want to
grow their results.
Business. Yeah. They want results, exactly.
And I think that you talked about the demand being there very early on in the journey, but it's probably accelerated even more, right? It's probably
when I started, it was a very foreign concept to most businesses. So I had to do a lot of education. What is this LinkedIn thing? How many people are on there? One of the good things about it was businesses hadn't had a negative experience with it yet. Whereas with most things in web marketing, most businesses, including myself, I'm sure you have invested in web marketing as well, have had a bad experience at some point. So they're like very cautious. Whereas LinkedIn was a relatively new thing. Now it's not. But the days of me trying to convince businesses that they should move over to LinkedIn, those days are behind me now.
Yeah, I agree.
Now they're already convinced that they need to be there.
And do you think even like post like the COVID thing, like do you think that
Oh, massive.
like, you know, it's not, there's less of an education requirement now. It's more like, okay, we have to do this.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't need to educate me anymore. Let's just get on with it.
Well, there's always sales guys sitting at home, you know, and the only way they can prospect is virtually. And so the leaders are going, you need to prospect virtually. Well, how do we do that?
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind is LinkedIn, right?
And that's why Salesforce as well, they had their biggest year, I think. This
Really?
year. Yeah. And,
That's awesome.
but I think that's because of that virtual sales.
And you can't approach people the same way virtually that you do, you know, in the traditional way. And by the same token, small businesses are very bad at this. Like they use social media as a way to procrastinate as well, because you do need to take the conversation offline at some point, like a video conference, you know, even if it's virtual, you know, is the logical next step. You don't want to get into this going back and forth on social media, discussing things, or you know, using it to avoid actually picking up the telephone.
You need to be able to close the deal as well. Like,
It's a so social media creates conversations, right? And conversations create relationships. Relationships should create business.
100%, yeah.
So, like the mistake that a lot of small businesses particularly make is they think that social media should go straight to clients instead of the conversation and relationship bit in between.
I mean, I've testament to that. I've connected to a lot of people on LinkedIn, and that's resulted in a lot of great relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I are an example. We actually met on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's right.
And we've done business together. We've got relationship together as well. Like it's an example of it. It's happening all the time.
Absolutely.
So,
You know, it's been a great relationship, and you know, you've introduced clients to me and vice versa. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So it's not always direct to clients. Sometimes it can be alliances, and you've just got visibility over your potential, or your business network, your potential referral network. So
I've got, on that note, I've actually got a bit of a history, which is interesting. It's taking it back. We're looking at the last 10 years. So LinkedIn was officially launched in 2003. Maybe I can quiz you. Anyway, it reached 1 million users within that year. And then in 2005, they released their premium services and advanced search tools. And that's when it started to, that's how they...
But it was still just a recruitment site back then.
Yes, but then they started to monetize very early on. So in 2006, they hit their first profitable month, which if you look at the other social media platforms, they took years to get to that point.
And also at 2006, you couldn't post content on there.
No.
So it was a very different.
It was a very rigid platform. Yeah. Now in 2007 was when they introduced the viewed your profile feature. Remember that?
Really?
Yeah, in 2007. And then 2008 they went mobile and launched advertising, and they had a valuation of $1 billion. 2011 they went IPO, and 2012 they acquired SlideShare. Remember SlideShare?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's still around. Yeah.
Yeah. So 119 million. Yeah. For that one. But I thought that was a pretty good acquisition because.
Oh, absolutely.
Like SlideShare is about sharing business content, right?
Yeah.
Company content, but then it keeps the engagement on the platform.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite clever because as you're flicking through and clicking, it's increasing engagement.
And the what was the LinkedIn Learning?
Yes, LinkedIn Learning. Yes, that was launched.
That's huge.
In 2015. When they acquired Lynda for
that's right.
Lynda.com for $1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion.
Yes.
Jesus.
Yeah.
They did it right, didn't they?
But now it's called LinkedIn Learning. But LinkedIn Learning is really good. It's almost like a little mini YouTube center or something, isn't it? Yeah. It's a video center.
I can't believe it. Linda sold for that much. I wonder if she's single.
And interestingly, in 2015, they launched Facebook at Work. Do you remember that? When Facebook had
Oh, Facebook did, yeah.
Yeah, they were trying to, I guess, take that market, the business
Yeah.
employee market, where you talk
Yeah.
to your work colleagues all on the one. But I think we even tried it. We signed up Facebook at work, and it didn't really quite. I don't know. Didn't work.
Yeah.
But I think because people were using Facebook to social, to socialize with their friends, they didn't really want to mix that from a work perspective as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I wouldn't want all my business
No,
contacts
so I don't think
to see
that
my Facebook pictures.
Yeah, and then like you said, Microsoft acquired it. But how much did you say they paid?
Over 26 billion.
Yeah,
Which a lot of people said they were overpaid. But I think when you're Microsoft and you've got over 1 billion users yourself, that they're thinking, okay, we can monopolize the whole thing because the CRMs, everything can integrate just with LinkedIn, which is like more data in a business context than anything.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure Amazon would have probably wanted that stake as well.
I think Microsoft are doing really well at the moment, in terms of holding market share.
So we'll move on to the next topics, which is LinkedIn latest updates. So can you, obviously we've got you on the show. We want to get your insights. There's been, just particularly around the connections, people can make connections, people are reaching out to each other.
Yeah.
There's people who are using this as a lead generation strategy. Especially if you're doing like business to business marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
What's happening now? Like, what's the latest?
Well, I mean, it's crazy that we've been able to connect with people and grow our social database for free at scale so easily for so long. Like I've always said, this won't last forever. This won't last forever. Like, now we can send, it looks like 100 invitations per week. It might be up to 150 in some countries. It's not always the same, but in any event, there's a limitation. So I've got, the week that it happened, I've got about 50 odd messages from guys that had started LinkedIn marketing companies saying, Nathaniel, what do we do? We can't spam people anymore. How are we going to keep generating leads for our clients? But like, if you can't make it work with 100 invitations per week, then you just got to get better. Like, it's good for the platform, because it forces you to take more care about who you're sending those 100 invitations to, what you're saying to them, and you can't get away with
just a big spray approach.
Even customizing the connection request. Everyone's doing it. Like I log into my clients' accounts, and they've got loads of connection requests that are customized, but the customization still seems to be, the majority of them are self-serving. That self-serving message, where it's just like, hi, I'd like to connect with you to see if any of your clients would like to buy my stuff. Like, what?
Or they start listing their services in the message.
Yeah. Or they say like, I'd like to connect with you and your network. Like,
What for?
Where's the value?
There's no. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I did some testing recently. I haven't shared this. I've only shared this with one client because it seems like it shouldn't be real, but we actually are getting a pretty high conversion rate now with just sending the standard invitation, no customization. Because you think about it, right? If everyone's sending these sales letters all the time, it actually looks more authentic. What's
a standard invitation?
Well, you just press a button and you don't write anything. Like you don't customize it at all.
Okay. So
which is like a big no-no, right?
Yeah, right. Interesting.
But people are actually accepting them more.
And it's
now.
almost like, because if there is a message, people are like, they're just trying to sell me.
Oh, this guy's real.
It's like an automatic, flicking the switch, I guess.
Yeah.
Like in terms of consumer behavior.
You have to be really specific. Like our messages, our connection requests now are really specific. Like
it's almost better to just not say anything and just connect, but I think it invites that person to go, okay, why is this person connecting to me? Then they start looking at your profile, and then they suss you out. So they're almost putting in the energy to do it.
So there's a few things that are working well. Like you can directly ask somebody a question in connection request, so they have to respond, and that works quite well. But it has to be relevant. Like, you can't just be sending out random questions to people. But even better than that is getting people to send you connection requests, right? Like, you do that through content. We were talking about ebooks, right?
Yes.
So if I put a post up and say, hey guys, I've just written this awesome ebook, 5 templates to generate leads on LinkedIn. If you want a copy, just comment below with yes please. All the people that are in my second degree network.
That's a very smart way of doing it.
Like I just send them an invitation, say, oh, so that I can send you the ebook, can you accept my invitation?
So I think you talked about 8 tips around lead generation. Are these some of the tips that you're giving?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't want to
What are the 8
digress,
tips?
but
Yeah.
like, is this?
Yeah.
Are these some? Is there any more? That,
Absolutely. Like, so if you want to get leads as quick as possible without spending any money, you just send people a message and you ask them to get on the telephone, but you just got to make sure that you don't assume that people have the problem that you solve until somebody tells you that they have the problem that you solve. No selling, right? It's condescending. It's like, so if I send you a message and say, hey, I noticed you got an online marketing agency. You should really be on LinkedIn. I could help you get a lot of leads on LinkedIn. Let's have a conversation. Like, I don't know if you want more leads. I don't know, if you're already doing LinkedIn marketing.
yes.
You may open offer as I don't know any of these things, right? So I'm assuming.
You're just assuming, yeah. Yep.
Whereas if I said, hey, I'm interested in what you guys are doing. I'd like to learn more, see if there's some synergies or even opportunities to collaborate. Just find out more about what you're doing, what your objectives are.
Because it might not be
Yeah.
increasing leads. It
And
might be.
And you might say on the phone call, you might say, oh, I've been really curious about how to generate leads on LinkedIn. And then I can say, well, would you like to know more about how I can help you with that? And as soon as you say yes, I've got permission then to tell you about what I do. It's a complete different.
But it still requires that person to take the conversation off social
absolutely.
media. And I guess this is a missing bit, right? Like people kind of assume that with LinkedIn.
Well, this is where marketing becomes sales, because in sales, the person who's asking the questions controlling the conversation, right? If you're sending messages back and forth, you're not in control of conversation. You need to get them offline, because it's not going to do them any justice if you start giving them information before you know. That's like if you don't send a proposal before you know someone's budget, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of sending someone
I've seen a tactic lately
proposal?
where someone will put a bit of interesting content, get your interest, and then obviously book the call. But then I've had this sort of text messaging. Have you had that before? Like communication through text messaging?
I will hit them on lots of different channels.
Yeah. And it seems it's text messaging, I guess, more personal because you're trying to come back through another channel, but you're using their mobile phone.
Yeah. I mean, like when you position yourself as a thought leader, you can just put people straight into your calendar booking link. They don't miss the call.
Yeah.
That's one of the great things about positioning yourself as an industry leader is when I was doing LinkedIn, even 10 years ago when no one else was offering it, businesses were still speaking to 3 or 4 other marketing service providers, and they were choosing between the quotes. And so my quote had to be really good, price competitive, loads of testimonials, blah, blah, blah. These days, I barely even need a proposal. Like it's normally done before they get the proposal, and they're not speaking to other providers because if they've been watching my content, they're like, this is the guy.
Because the content is the pre-filter, it's a pre-qualification, not the proposal, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, the proposal is an element of it, but it's not.
Before I started doing content, they had no way of knowing if I was full of shit or not, or knew what I was talking about. But if they can sit at home on their couch and consume 3 hours of YouTube videos, and they go, oh, what he says makes sense, without me even knowing, by the time they reach out, they're pretty...
Yeah, 100%. So it's like using the content as a brand awareness tool. But we'll come to content further down. But the next topic is, what are the worst mistakes that people make on LinkedIn?
Yeah. Well,
what are people doing wrong, basically?
So they're impatient and they're selfish. Everyone wants results now, and everyone's just thinking about what's in it for me, always thinking about what's in it for me. So it's very hard to build a relationship with somebody when you're trying to extract value from them,
Straight off the go. Yeah, off the cuff, basically. Yeah.
They're like, well, why would I want to, speak to this person? What are they going to do for me? Like you've got to think about building a relationship with somebody.
100%, yeah.
If you go at a networking function, you would never go up to somebody and say, hey, let me tell you all about what I do and, my discounts and how you can buy from us.
Well, I think even in the B2B space, because B2B is still very relationships driven. It's all about creating a connection and then building the trust, right?
Yeah.
And once you get that, then you can talk about business and what you do.
Yeah.
It's credibility and all of this
Business
sort of
is
stuff,
all about relationships. So that's a big one. patience, like anything worthwhile takes a lot. You know, it's hard work. Like people are like, yeah, okay, so how do you automate all that? You know, I was like, well, if it was that easy, you know, everyone would be doing it and it wouldn't be as effective. So you got to be patient. You know, you got to put the work in. It's an awesome tool. We've never had such a powerful tool at our disposal before. Like, I mean, where else could you tap into a 700 million large database? It's crazy. It still blows my mind. People upload their CV, you know, which is not like, I completely understand why they do that. That's what LinkedIn was set up to do. But if you're on there to connect with potential clients, you know, you're never going to walk into a business meeting with a potential client and say, oh, nice to meet you, sir. Here's my resume. Like, that's not going to help you close any deals. Like, no one wants to know like that you worked as a barrister and then you like lived in Beijing for 2 years, and so you have to write your profile in a way that explains your value proposition in customer-centric language. So they're if they look at it, they're going to look at the first sentence, last sentence, and they're going to scan the middle. So you've got to write it in a way that's going to accommodate that. If they're looking on a mobile, like, as soon as they lose their place in your paragraph, they're gone. Like,
it's like, what value can you create, and how does that relate to me, so to speak, rather
and
than
also,
just listing what you do.
And build trust is the next thing, right? So like, because people are on there, when they're on there looking at profiles, they've got their guard up and they're going, is this guy trying to rip me off? Is this guy full of shit, or is this guy gonna give me some value? And so you build trust with like recommendations, but you can also build it just by being authentic, like telling people why you do what you do, why you're passionate about it,
and connect it to the right people as well. Like, they look at your connections.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. Just don't be full of shit. Like, you know, like a lot of people write their about sections like, what are these overused terms that are on LinkedIn? Like, I'm a motivated, outgoing, hardworking,
enthusiastic.
Yeah,
I understand. Yeah.
Like, who the fuck are you?
I understand. Bubbly.
Sorry, I'm sure you don't swear on your podcast.
No, it's all right. So there's some of the worst mistakes. So what about, like, if we look at like someone that wants to do a business on LinkedIn and they want to generate leads, they would, I think nowadays you have to be very industry specific in terms of, you know, if you're working in aged care, for instance.
It helps. It definitely helps.
Or you know, like you said,
it's a very easy way to
some
set
of
it
those doctor surgeons or something that you said is an example, but say aged care or whatever. It's really, if you're wanting clients in a niche, you really have to focus on those niche categories rather than trying to, I guess, look at a lot of different industries at once.
You have to say no to people that aren't in that target audience. You know, because the amount of business owners I speak to, I say, who's your ideal client, right? And they tell me who their ideal clients is, and I say, how many of those have you got? And they're like, well, none. Like, all of our clients are not ideal. And I'm like, well,
that's not a good start.
Get rid of them.
Yeah.
You've got to get rid of them. You're never going to be able to serve the clients you want to if you're still serving the clients that you don't want to.
Don't want to. Yeah.
It's difficult. Like, I found it hard when I was starting out to go. You know, even when somebody asked me like, oh, you know, could you set up a Google advertising campaign for me? And I know, like, you know, they would spend a couple $1,000 with me to set it up, and I could do it in probably half an hour. And I'm like, nope. I'm a LinkedIn marketing specialist.
Yeah,
very
correct.
difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult to say no to those certain things. Yeah,
but that's what having a niche is. You know?
And with the advanced search strategies, what are some of the techniques that you're sort of using, I guess, to hone in on the target audience? Like, can you give any tips?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
Well, the main thing is, like, it gets easier the more you do niche down, because if I've connected to 200 people and they're all mining companies, I'm going to find more mining companies in search results. They're more likely to accept my connection request because we're going to have more connections in common. So it does get easier over time if you niche, but like if you're connecting with everyone, it doesn't really. But if you use the advanced search feature, you got to be creative, because a lot of people won't put the accurate industry. They may not have updated their industry. You know, they may be working for a mining company, but they're head of marketing. So do they put themselves in a mining category or a marketing category? So you have to think about all these things, try different variations, and then you use the advanced search feature. LinkedIn Sales Navigator becomes handy here. You know, drilling down by company size, location, second degree connections, and then in the main search bar, I use I don't know how to pronounce it, Boolean search. Like, you know, you can put or in capital letters or and in capital letters. So you might be a founder or director, you know, so
I
I'll,
understand. So it picks up more categories, I guess,
yeah,
within the
and
title.
not
Yeah.
as well, like you
Yep.
negative out, like you might want to negative out consultants, or you might want to negative out coaches, I don't know.
Teachers or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Just like Google advertising,
Yeah,
negative
exactly. Yeah.
keywords.
So you're using the advanced search as more of like a targeting tool, like you would in
Absolutely.
like Google Ads or Facebook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I use
Yeah.
groups as well. I do a lot of research. So if a client does, if a business does have an ideal client, I say, great, what's the name of the decision maker of that ideal client? And I look at their profile, and I take note of like all of the things on there. One of the big things is groups. Like what groups are they members of? Because if they're a member of a certain group, it's likely that people like them will also be.
Yeah.
But most businesses will connect to groups that are related to what they do, not what their clients do. So when I was targeting these medical practitioners, I was joining like, you know, all these plastic surgery groups and stuff. It's interesting actually that the associations in that industry still contact me to get me to do like training for them and stuff, but they're not really like, they're not going to generate leads on LinkedIn. But I was the specialist for medical practitioners in online marketing in the whole of Australia within about 6 months, just because I was connected with so many
All these
of them.
groups. Yeah.
You know, I could reach out to the most successful surgeon in Australia, and he'd be like, "Geez, this guy's connected to 700 people in my industry.
In your industry. Yeah.
What does he know?"
What's he
and my
know?
headline
Yeah.
said, "Online marketing for medical practitioners."
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah.
And
Sounds
so
very
it's a
specific,
very
yeah.
easy way to stand out from everyone else. You know, that's a very quick way to do it. You could have no experience,
Yep.
but you could say, you know, I service this market and this is what I do. And if it's niche enough, it'll stand out to
And that's the way to
people.
grow business, isn't it? Like nowadays, is to actually be more niche
Online it is,
on a
yeah.
specific service, and that's what
Online,
people.
yeah.
I think it's the mindset thing. Once you get around that mindset, because you kind of think, oh, if I restrict myself to one niche, I'm restricting my business flow.
Man,
But it's actually the opposite.
Everyone said to me, is there going to be enough business for you on LinkedIn? And like, you know, I mean, my average value of a client went down when I started my company because I was only doing one service instead of all of the web marketing stuff. But I noticed like I was getting the call whenever LinkedIn came up in conversation. I was like, it's only a matter of time before these conversations are happening around the boardroom table at Westpac or Apple or like,
100%. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
and like I would have never bagged clients like that being an online marketing consultant.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, moving on to content marketing, how can like people use this better? Because you see this a lot on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's now obviously quite focused on encouraging people or its users to share content or to put content on posts up, right? Never used to be like that, but that's quite very much
Yeah.
the case now. But what advice can you give to people to leverage this feature the best way?
Yeah.
Because some people are obviously doing it right, some people not so much.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I mean, you can get a huge amount of organic reach on LinkedIn, like if you know what you're doing.
it's phenomenal now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the organic reach.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what Facebook used to be like, you know, remember 10 years ago or something, when you do a post and lots of people would see
Yeah.
it.
But it is a still quite an intelligent algorithm. You know, with Facebook, it was kind of like you could show it to most of your followers, whereas LinkedIn's taking into account who they're connected to, followers, what hashtags they follow, and actually their behavior as well. So like what posts it's been looking at before, how long they've been looking at them, dwell time, all that kind of stuff. So I think you should study LinkedIn, like follow, you know, LinkedIn experts like myself. Spend about 50% of your time doing that. The other 50% of your time, study your audience, because what your audience needs is going to be different to what my audience, you know, needs. And
The thing is, you can do that. If you're trying to target someone, you can actually go on their profile and look at what post activity they've been doing and what
exactly.
interests them,
Yeah.
where are they commenting.
And you know,
And it shows all of that
No one does
information.
that. No one bothers to do it.
Yeah.
You could put a poll up and say, "Hey guys, you're all in my network. I'm posting content. Would you like to hear about this, or this?" And they can vote on it. You could call them up. Like I used to take people for lunch in Melbourne that like stopped following me. So people that would follow and engage a lot and weren't anymore, I'd like go to Melbourne. I would catch up with 4 or 5 of them, individually, take them out for lunch, just so I could like learn. I'm like, why did you stop following? What did you like? What didn't you like? And most of the time, they stopped just because of unrelated stuff, like they changed jobs or whatever, or they're not using LinkedIn as much. But the feedback that I got, like directly from sitting across face to face from them, was way more valuable than learning the latest hacks and stuff.
Yes, yeah. And again, it comes down to the human element.
Because you've got to add value, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good one. That's
Not in the way
tip.
that you think.
That's a very good
value.
tip, yeah.
Like they've got to perceive it to be valuable.
Yeah, and I think now it's about business owners creating content, like a podcast like this or something like that, sharing it, but then you can split that video up. But I've noticed that a lot of people are, getting a YouTube link and kind of maybe sharing it within LinkedIn, or they've got a blog post that's external from the platform. But really the best thing to do is to upload that content, right? The
well, with all of these platforms, they want people to spend more time on there. That's their goal.
Yeah.
If people spend more time on LinkedIn, they make more money. So you got to align what you do with the objective of the platform. So if you start putting links to take people off LinkedIn, like,
but lots of people do that, don't they? They're sharing
I
content.
I do it sometimes, but you're just not going to get as much reach. Like,
no. But I like that. You got to align your objectives to
then
the
you'll
objectives
never go
of the
wrong,
platform.
no matter how many updates they make, because you got the same goal as them.
Yes.
And so you're always going to be like, it's like with the Google thing, right? When I started doing SEO, I was trying to hack my way to the top of Google. Worked for a little while. Then I ended up on page 100 because I wasn't aligned. Google was constantly trying to give the user a better experience. Whereas I was just trying to trick the system into getting more exposure.
So I think you've got a sort of a topic around behind the brand. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So behind the brand was a way for me to create content for business owners with no experience engineering content. And I sit down with them and interview them, much like this. But I ask them questions that I know will create engaging content. Hopefully they forget the cameras are there. And so it's personal. Because like most content marketing companies or video production companies will curate content. Like if the guy hasn't got any experience, the director in front of a camera, they're not going to ask him to create videos. No. They'll go and find what's trending online and they'll, post it. But it's not building a relationship. It's not showing them, who's behind the brand.
It's not quite authentic, yeah.
Yeah, so with one interview, like 45 minutes to an hour, we can create 50 micro videos, we can create polls, we can create images, we write all the captions, and it's extremely cost effective, like 1 hour of a client's time, and we've got 4 or 5 months worth of content.
Oh, wow.
And then at the end of those 4 months, we look at all of the stats and we're like, these are the topics that people are interested in. They get the most engagement. So next time we do Behind the Brand, we're going to talk more about that. And that's when you start to really optimize for the audience, because most people put posts and they're like, that did well. They're just talking about it, like loads of different stuff.
That sounds really cool. So it's a new sort of service offering there.
I've been working on it for like a couple years, but it's in the last 4 months, it's like where I want it to be. I've got video marketing companies that are just bashing these videos out.
Yeah.
And the engagement's phenomenal.
Yes.
A lot of these businesses that are hiring us to do this have never done content before, right? On LinkedIn. And so like I see them get like 3,000-4,000 views a video, which is like epic,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But they just think that's normal. Like,
yeah.
Because it's the first time they've done it. They're like, oh,
that's
Nathaniel,
really
the last
good,
one didn't quite get 4,000 views. I'm like, it's fucking free.
That's a lot. That's pretty good. And it's so highly, LinkedIn's a very...
It works out to be like just over $100 a video.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just at the cost
and
of
it's like
it. But still, that's the thing. I think people are used to these big numbers like 70,000 or 100,000, but LinkedIn is a more concentrated platform. It's a high value people. Yeah. So just getting 3,000 eyeballs is fantastic. Like it's a really good achievement.
Yeah, but you just got to be consistent.
And it's organic as well. You're not really even paying for
it,
are you? Not even putting...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the production cost is so low just because it's so efficient. Like we like the McDonald's of content, except much classier.
Yeah. So the last topic, which is something I like to talk about as well, just to close off our chat today, is building trust.
Yeah.
And you talked about the mere exposure effect.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And I think it's a bit of a phenomenon that you're talking about. Yeah.
So mere exposure effect, psychological phenomena that states that the more times a business or individual is exposed to your brand, the more familiar it becomes. Therefore, the more likely they are to choose you over another service provider or another product. So, like in the old days, that would mean if you see 5 Coca-Cola billboards, and you don't see any Pepsi ones, just because Coca-Cola is more familiar, you'll feel safer buying that product. These days, you need a lot more exposures, but you need to build likability and trust with these exposures. And if you're putting a call to action in front of somebody all the time with ads, you're going to build negative brand sentiment. It'll get to the point where that individual's like, fuck, not this bloody guy again.
Yes.
And they can even tell the platform not to show me this guy's content anymore. And it's gonna accelerate. It'll get to a point where the customer can choose exactly what they see in the newsfeed. Because if these social media sites, start interrupting people, they'll just leave.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, how do you build likability and trust? We add value, and there's only 4 ways you can do it through content. You can do it through entertainment, information, education, and inspiration. Those 4 ways. So on LinkedIn, we see a lot of education and information, but like entertainment and inspiration, are way more powerful. So because it's a business platform, most people on there are like, their content's boring. So it's not that hard to stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, and I think nowadays, like especially marketers are terrible because they destroy platforms. People get sick of it because it's always the sell that you're sort of seeing come through. And I think LinkedIn's the same because a lot of people are seeing an ad or piece of content that leads to a marketing funnel, that leads to a call to action where they have to download something or do something. So everything always leads to some sort of sell. Whereas I think going the opposite is, you know what I mean? Like you kind of need to focus on content.
If the person bought, right, and it led them through the customer journey to buy, and they were happy with the product,
with the process,
they'd be happy with that whole thing. So I think I look at it like, don't try and sell to people,
not straight away,
but try and help them buy. Like if they get to the end of the article and they want to know what the payment terms are, like that needs to flow, so they move through the customer journey without selling to them,
No, that's good. All right, man, that's really awesome to have you. Some really good tips there, and I think we covered some great topics. I think there's probably room for a version 2 LinkedIn podcast. But
I just want to say you're doing a great job with this podcast.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
And I don't think it'll be long before you're like taking over the what do they call it? The iTunes chart.
We'll see about that. Yeah, but thanks everyone, and please like or comment on the video, and we'll see you next time. We appreciate your time. Thanks, mate. Cheers. Thank you.